Hey everyone, Ryan from Ebike Escape. In this video, we're checking out two super unique electric bikes. Let's get into the review of the brand new FUELL Flluid-2S and 3S. Before we get started with the review, if you are looking to purchase any electric bike that we feature on the channel, be sure to check out the links in the description. Using those links before making your purchase is a free and easy way to help support the channel and makes videos like this one possible. Thank you so much for your support. We'll also throw down some other resources in the description: our popular electric bike accessories list, top e-bike brands page, and our electric bike discounts code page, where we track all the deals on the electric bike brands that we follow. With that, let's get into this review. We're here in Wisconsin, which is my home state, so I was excited to come down for a review on two electric bikes that really stand out. Now, these bikes are currently for sale on crowdfunding, but eventually you can go to their website and purchase them. Let's firstly talk about the FUELL Fluid 3. That's the step-through model that you see here, so much more accessible. It's also the single battery version. When this goes outside the crowdfunding campaign, this is going to be priced at $5,500. So obviously you're getting a better deal if you buy from the company during their crowdfunding phase. And then you have the FUELL Fluid 2. This is a 2S in front of me, and that's the high step dual battery version. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. And this is going to be priced at $6,000. The only difference between the 2 and the 2S and the 3 and the 3S is going to be the top speed. So the 2 and 3 will be class 2 electric bikes with a top speed of 20 miles per hour while pedaling or using the throttle. And then if you get the S version, that is going to have the throttle kickoff at 20 miles per hour, but you will be able to pedal up to a top speed of 28 miles per hour. Now, interestingly, FUELL has folks from a motorcycle background that created the company, Buell Motorcycles, in case you're familiar, and they couldn't just create electric bikes. They're also working on electric motorcycles. So if you're interested in that, you can check out their website to learn more. But let's dive in to the electric bikes. For this review, I'm going to showcase the dual battery version, the high step model, but you can opt for the step through, which is going to be much easier to step over, though they did make this frame design here come a little bit lower. Now, this model is close to production, but I'm going to call out some slight differences that you can expect in the final iteration. Let's start up in the front with the brakes. This bike comes with Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. They're 2-piston brakes. They are paired with 180 millimeter rotors. Of course, at this price point, we expect to have hydraulic disc brakes for increased stopping power. The bike comes equipped with a quick release up front, so you can remove this tire. Say you want to throw it in the back of your vehicle. In the rear, on the production model, it will have a through axle. The Fluid models come with front and rear metal fenders that hug the tires very nicely. And speaking of tires, we have Pirelli e-bike tires. These are 27.5 by 2.35 inches wide. Now, given the tread on these tires, they're surely set up for street riding. That's kind of the idea behind the company, this bike being basically the best electric bike for commuting. Ultra range as well as power. And as I'm going through this electric bike, I'm going to call out some of the unique component choices. And one of the reasons that they went with these Pirelli tires is because they're e-bike rated for the regulations in the EU for bikes that go up to 45 kilometers an hour. We have reflectors located on the front suspension. This is a SR Sun Tour front suspension fork, and it is an air fork, which is a higher quality component, and it does have a lockout on the right. I'll go ahead and push on the suspension so you can get an idea of what to expect. Of course, it is fully tunable depending on your rider weight. Jumping into the head tube, we have the FUELL logo located at the top. We can look at the rest of the graphic package on the bike. Up front, we have an integrated front headlight. Again, this being a commuter-oriented electric bike, they wanted to go with a super bright light. Again, this one also meets the regulations in the EU. And one thing unique about this front headlight is it does have a high and low beam, which is going to be a little bit difficult to show off in the daylight. Let's talk briefly about the cable management. The company has done a really nice job because all these cables go right into the head tube for a nice clean look. Moving on to the cockpit, the company is going to include this mirror, which is really nice, a nice bar end mirror. We have FUELL branded ergonomic locking grips. I already talked about the Tektro hydraulic disc brakes. Of course, we have motor cutoffs. As soon as you hit the brakes, it's going to cut power to the motor. These handlebars are flat, so a bit more of an aggressive riding position, again, designed for commuters. Jumping into the controls and the display, this is where this bike starts to be differentiated. In fact, you're not going to find any electric bikes as of recording this that are using the Vallejo motors. So it is a monochrome display. In the center, we have a light button that is going to turn the light on and off. But then, as I mentioned, you have the high and low beam on the left side, which is nice. And we also have a button for an extremely loud horn. That again meets the regulations in the EU for a speed pedelec up to 28 miles per hour. In the top right-hand corner, we have the current battery capacity with bars, miles per hour, front and center, trip listed in the bottom. And then this bike has an automatic transmission, which is what the A stands for. Jumping into the pedal assist levels, turbo, and then we have eco, and then predict, which is set to a cadence of 55. And that's really going to optimize for that pedaling with the gearing. And then in turbo or eco, we can actually go into manual transmission. Now you see we are at the third gear of 7. And actually on the right side, that's where you change the gears. Normally this would be a pedal assist up and down on any other electric bike that I've reviewed. Cycling through these will change the gears in case you don't want to use the automatic transmission. And again, what is really cool in the predict setting, this bike is smart. You can connect it to your phone and really modify this to your liking and your cadence. Paired with this display, FUELL has developed an app that'll allow you to track trips, allows you to track and lock your electric bike, and of course, tailor the settings to your liking. Now, in many mid-drive electric bikes that I review, you do not have a throttle, but this electric bike does. It is a right-hand thumb throttle. Let's jump into the batteries. First, I just want to show off the Fluid 3. The battery is located in the top of the frame, which means it's very easy to access. One of the things sometimes with these step-through electric bikes is they'll put it on the bottom, which sometimes there can be clearance issues. But let's jump into the dual battery version, which I imagine a lot of people are going to want to opt for. Now, these are pre-production models. So the production model is going to have a little bit more of a paint-matched battery here. And there will be a charge port in the frame, so you can charge both batteries at the same time. They will include a 4-amp charger. Now, when you're riding this electric bike, it will drain the highest battery first if, say, one is higher, but then they actually drain simultaneously. And I really like that the company is just going to have one plug that charges both batteries. Of course, you can take them out of the frame, of course, if you want to charge them inside. And the batteries can be removed, the bottom one located underneath the down tube right here, as well as a keyhole right here. These are 1 kilowatt hour each. So you get a total of 2 kilowatt hours, which is an insane amount of range. The company is estimating a range of up to 250 miles in the eco pedal assist level. All right, let's jump into the motor, and we're gonna have Dan talk about this because I am brand new to this motor. Of course, I'm gonna talk about how it feels in the upcoming first-person riding footage, but let's get some additional information on the Vallejo Cycli motor. All right, we're here with Dan, who is the Director of Engineering from FUELL, and he's gonna talk to us about the new motor they decided to put on these electric bikes.
Yes, we've got the Vallejo Cycli mid-drive unit. Really very excited about it. It has a 750 watt sustained output, but can provide up to 1200 watts instantaneously to help you get up a hill or accelerate from a stop. As mentioned before, it's fully integrated. It has a 7-speed gearbox built into the mid-drive unit. So it makes it very simple, very clean, virtually no maintenance. There is no derailleur to adjust, no internal hub that needs servicing. Once a year, you change the oil in it, and that's the extent of the service. Up on the display, you can see it has 3 different modes, 4 if you count no assist. So turbo, my personal favorite, which gives you max assist at all times. You can shut off the assist completely. Eco, which is going to give you your best range and is still a really very reasonable level of assist. And then predict. Predict is running a number of algorithms. It's looking at the cadence you're pedaling at. It's looking at the amount of assist that you're using, and it adjusts the assist and what gear you're in together to maintain a consistent cadence. It makes the ride very enjoyable, and best of all, you just don't think about the ride. That's the whole idea of this vehicle. Is we're looking to get people on it who aren't necessarily bicyclists, and the motor lets you just enjoy riding and not think about what you're doing. You're not worried about what gear you're in. You're not worried about, am I coming up to a stop? Do I have to shift up? Do I have to shift down? You just hop on it and you ride. The Gates carbon belt really adds to your trouble-free riding experience. There's no need to lubricate it. There's no need to tension it. It's installed initially at the factory, the tension is set, and you just go from there. So far, I haven't seen one fail on one of our bikes. I believe Gates specs somewhere in the 20 to 30,000 mile range, depending on the application. So for most people, they're going to get a really very long life out of this belt, and with no worry and no maintenance.
Jumping back into the bike, we have metal pedals, a burly kickstand in the rear of the bike located at the center of the frame. Something to be mindful of is that when you're moving this electric bike, you might have the pedals come in contact with it, so something to be mindful of. On the rear stay here, this is going to be your speed sensor for the mid-drive motor, the Tektro brakes in the rear, and again, this will be a through axle in the rear. Given this is a commuter electric bike, of course, we have full metal fenders as well as a rear rack. Fuel is including this MIC rack, and they'll also sell some of the compatible accessories if you want to purchase them direct from Fuel. In the rear is a integrated rear light, and it does operate as a brake light. When you push the brakes, it does go brighter. Moving on to the rear, this is a belt-driven mid-drive electric bike. This is a Gates carbon belt drive, and you'll notice that there is no internally geared hub in the rear, which means all the gear changes take place in the motor. So I can't wait to get on this electric bike. Moving on to the saddle, this is a Fuel saddle, though the production one will be a slightly more comfortable memory foam saddle. You can always check out our electric bike accessories list if you're looking for other saddles that I see people purchase. Before we get started with the first-person riding footage, I just wanted to show off the step-through, how accessible it is compared to the high step, though I think they did a very unique job with the top tube. So step-through electric bike, very easy for me to just step over and hop on this bike. And of course, I'm going to be able to get full leg extension, even though I am a 6-foot rider. They really designed these electric bikes to be a one size fits most. And then the high step here is still going to be more accessible than some of those electric bikes that will have a top tube up high here. And of course, you get the additional benefit of having the dual batteries. All right, with that, let's see what these bikes can do and take it up a large hill and get into some first-person riding footage and show off the automatic transmission. All right, let's get into the first-person riding footage. Now, riding this electric bike, it is far different than anything that I've reviewed on the channel. So our first test is going to be throttle alone. You do have access, full access to the throttle, no matter whatever settings you're in. And again, it should get us up to 20 miles per hour using the throttle. And we'll see how it feels, and I'll read off the speed on the screen. This is a fairly flat area. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, throttle only. Takes off nice and slow, and then kind of kicks in a little bit more. 13, 16, there's 20 miles an hour. And according to the display, it's holding us right at 19, no problem. So it took a little bit to get started, but then I really felt the motor kick in there, and of course it'll hold me at 20 miles per hour, no problem. One thing I wanted to talk about with this bike, so when you're riding it and you're changing gears and you're coasting, there's settings for the motor to timing settings. So after a while, if you're coasting, it'll shift down, but then if you start pedaling maybe a little bit sooner, it's still going to be in a higher gear. And of course you can override this the settings, so you can go into manual shifting. Another thing is if you have pedal assist completely off, say you want to ride this with no assistance, you still have access to the gearbox. So it kind of operates like a heavy non-electric bike, but still with the shifting right into the motor. Now I'm going to go through the various settings. Let's start off in Eco. Now I feel like the way these are labeled is a very clear definition of really how it feels. So Eco is going to be the level where you're just getting a little bit of assist. So you maybe want a little bit more of a workout, want to travel at higher speeds. And I will say it's also very accessible starting from a stop. And I'll call out the speeds. Motor kicking on just a little bit. Again, this is torque sensing. It's also measuring cadence and speed. 8 miles an hour, a nice and easy cadence. And of course, if I put in a little bit more effort, it's going to give me more and shift up automatically. 13, 14 miles an hour. And what's nice is I can pedal at a slower cadence, which is what I personally prefer in Eco, and get a little bit more of a workout going 17, 18 miles an hour. Now, the company told me that if you can hear the motor in the background, it's a different sound than both the hub motor, geared hub motors, as well as other mid-drive electric bikes. It has a little bit of a whiny sound, but in the production model, they're gonna tune that slightly so it's a little bit different. Let's go ahead and go into the predict level. Hit the right button here. Again, still an automatic shifting. And I'll start from a stop again. Now, this is the level where it's targeting 55 or so cadence. And what's nice is you can basically pedal at that cadence and bike's just gonna shift around you. 10 miles an hour, 11 miles an hour, 13, 14. Again, putting in a little bit more effort is gonna get you a little bit more. Kind of rolling hills around here. 21, so we did pass the class 2 designation into class 3, going down a slight hill. 26, and perhaps unsurprisingly, still able to provide plenty of power, and it's cutting me off at 28 miles an hour. Being it is a class 3 electric bike. All right, we're going to go in turbo, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about the automatic shifting because what's nice is I just came to a stop and we turned around and no need to shift down as you might want to do in a different electric bike. It just does it automatically. Another thing I wanted to call out, in Eco, the motor is going to peak a little bit less compared to turbo, where you're going to get that full 1200 watts peak. And we'll see how turbo feels. And we already got up to 28 miles per hour in predict, but we'll see if we can do it a little bit faster here in turbo. I feel like the motor engages nice and easily, so I think it's going to be accessible to newer riders or perhaps those unfamiliar with electric bikes. 13, 14, 15, and we're at 18 already. And I can feel the motor wanting to kind of give me more as I put in a little bit more power, and there we go. Just tons of speed. And even in this setting, predict is nice, but even in turbo, I feel like I'm pedaling at a perfect cadence, kind of zooming up this hill. And then of course, if you want to manually shift, which I imagine a lot of people buying this electric bike won't want to do, we can hit this top button here, and I'm in third gear here. And you can start off and, yeah, I'm pretty much ghost pedaling, not providing any effort, but then I can shift up. And what I noticed playing around with this a little bit more, you know, the gear shifts are just very slight. You can just barely feel it, the motor shifting kind of underneath your feet, I guess I'll call it, with this mid-drive motor. It's definitely a different experience. And so, yeah, you can manually shift, and it's just done with a button compared to normal gears that you see on many bikes, electric or not, and most of the bikes that we review on the channel. So that's kind of how this bike performs on flat ground as a Class 3 electric bike. I think the performance kind of speaks for itself, and not surprising given the company has a motorcycle background. But if I were riding this electric bike, gonna be in Predict or Turbo, and yeah, just having lots of fun, providing more power and just like feeling all the power of the motor. It's a fun bike to ride. All right, so let's see what it can do up a hill. All right, so we found a fairly steep hill here, and we're gonna do a hill climb test. I'll put a picture of the hill on the screen so you get an idea of just how steep it is, because the GoPro makes it look much smaller. And we'll just see how the bike performs just going throttle only. Now, riding this electric bike around, I know the motor has plenty of power. Pretty easily getting you up to speeds of 28 miles an hour. We're at 18 now. And it seems like the motor's just not faltering at all. It doesn't even really sound any different. And back at 19. And of course, on an electric bike with this much battery power, if you wanted to just throttle around, you don't need to worry as much about range. All right, with that, let's get into some third-person riding footage, and I'll give you my concluding thoughts on the FUELL Flluid-2S. FUELL set out to do something different in the e-bike space, which according to my short research, isn't so much different than what Buell did with motorcycles. They stood for excellence in engineering, and in this case, unquestionably, the standout feature is the Vallejo mid-drive motor, which I think I'm stating the obvious at this point, seems like a feat of engineering. So it's no wonder FUELL wanted to push to make an e-bike with this motor, which by the way, is made in France. I don't have a crystal ball to tell me if this is what we can expect from all mid-drive e-bikes in the future, but I also can't confidently say it won't be either. But what I do know is that this is a mid-drive unlike anything else currently on the market. We've seen automatic shifting before with internally geared hubs, but in this case, the gearbox is housed in the motor, and yes, even the controller is packed in there as well. This actually makes the e-bike simpler to assemble, which has resulted in FUELL opting for assembling these e-bikes stateside. I really enjoyed the automatic shifting, and yes, of course, being in turbo mode, it certainly felt smoother than any kind of manual shifter you see on most other e-bikes. Riding this almost made me feel like I wasn't riding an e-bike at all if it wasn't for the 28 mile/hour top speed. And that is partially due to the acceleration, but also due to it sounding like a jet engine taking off. I'm sure it's something you get used to, just like the sound of a geared hub motor, but the sound is so different than what I'm used to that it's the first thing I noticed. I do hope they are able to make some decent improvements to the sound in the final version. Besides the motor, the real magic happens with the pairing of a Gates carbon belt drive, which in my opinion makes for a solid commuting platform. No mess and no maintenance for potentially tens of thousands of miles. Speaking of miles, the Flluid-2 and 2S have about 3 times the amount of battery capacity as the average e-bike. That's 2,000 watt-hours of capacity, which is probably overkill for some, but just having to worry less about keeping it topped off is a nice feature as well. Certainly the step-through 3 and 3S is going to provide plenty of range for most riders, with its still impressive 1,000 watt-hour battery. The overall look of this bike is futuristic, and FUELL is going to be selling these unique helmets which have exposed carbon fiber. It was nice to see a name brand air suspension fork up front, and the Tektro hydraulic disc brakes provide adequate stopping power. The tires are e-bike rated, and I really like to see the safety features, a loud horn, and the high-low beams for the lights. The included fenders for commuting are also a must. Now, as with all crowdfunding campaigns, the company still has to deliver, and this was still a pre-production version. Still, it was close to the final product, and the company expects first deliveries coming in July 2023, which isn't always the case with these campaigns. So if you want a deal, now's the time to buy, and we're certainly going to keep an eye on feedback from customers when the first batches come out. And by the way, FUELL is going to be shipping these e-bikes worldwide. For the EU and US, the shipping costs, VAT, and import fees are included in the price. Overall, the FUELL Fluid-2 and 2S and 3 and 3S stand out as e-bikes that you can just hop on and ride, letting you worry about what's in front of you instead of what gear you're in, whether your drivetrain needs maintenance, or even whether you have enough battery. You will have to change the oil once a year though. Sure, it's an expensive e-bike, but there simply isn't anything else on the market like this. I'm very curious to hear what you think about these electric bikes in the comment section below. Helpful links can be found in the description if you're looking to buy an e-bike. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.